From the headquarters of Telesur English in Caracas, Venezuela, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. We begin with the third day of the United Nations General Assembly, which saw impassioned interventions from a number of Caribbean and Latin American leaders, as well as a number of other high-level meetings taking place. Foreign ministers from the Group of 77, plus China, met and named Palestine as president of the group for the next year. The United Nations and the European Union launched their Spotlight initiative on ending violence against women and girls in Latin America. The Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Ralph Gonsalves, defended the UN's principle of non-intervention before this assembly.
The principles of non-intervention and non-interference are of particular importance to small island developing states. Lacking military might or economic wealth, and constrained within narrow borders, we owe our existence as nation states to a global recognition and respect for the principle that no other nation, large or small, rich or poor, near or far, should be allowed to interfere in our sovereign affairs or interfere in matters properly resident in our domestic jurisdiction.
The Prime Minister of Jamaica, Andrew Holness, told the Assembly that climate change is an existential problem for small island states like his.
Jamaica and our CARICOM brothers and sisters cannot have the luxury of engaging in a philosophical debate on whether or not climate change is real. The issue is existential for us. Major storms are no longer uncommon. They have given way to superstorms. They are stronger and more frequent. Every year, the Caribbean region, leading right up to the southeastern coast of the United States of America, live in fear for 5 months.
The president of Haiti, Jovenel Moïse, also spoke at the Assembly about the hardships that his nation has had to face.
The country lived through the terrible and painful experience of a popular uprising as a reaction to the demands of the staff-monitored program concluded with the IMF. Indeed, Haiti, which does not produce oil, is confronted with the painful requirement to continue to finance government subsidies for petrol prices.
Speaking to the General Assembly after the G77 meeting, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas highlighted the acts of aggression by Israeli forces against the Palestinian people.
I was also instructed to approach international courts, including the International Criminal Court, the ICC, to investigate Israel's breaches of treaties and the aggressions by the Israeli occupying forces and settlers against our people on our land and our holy sites.
As part of the events around the General Assembly, Venezuela's Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza met with a number of high-ranking government officials and diplomats. The newly elected UN General Assembly President Maria Fernanda Espinosa from Ecuador was among them. Arreaza also met Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. Arreaza later tweeted about his experience at the General Assembly on Thursday, saying, "Our comprehensive strategic alliance progresses quickly for the shared development of our peoples." On Wednesday, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro took the podium at the UN in defense of his country. Maduro said Venezuela has become the victim of diplomatic and economic attacks. He also said that the U.S. wants to dominate the world and called such a stance unhealthy for global peace. The president once again restated his willingness to meet with U.S. President Donald Trump. Activists from Venezuela's United Socialist Party marched in Guarenas outside Caracas in support of President Maduro's speech at the United Nations. This march was led by the youth wing of the PSUV. The demonstrators said they wanted to show the world that Venezuela is resistant. They called for an end to sanctions and other financial attacks on their country.
I think that we need from the UN is a lifting of all the blockades imposed on Venezuela by the North American Empire.
We are sending a message that they need to respect our country. That's our message to the world.
We are supporting President Nicolas Maduro and his speech at the UN. We are showing the world the potential that Venezuela has, and that we are not anybody's colony. Long live Venezuela and Maduro.
As tensions between Colombia and Venezuela rose at the UN, the Colombian media are reporting that the country's armed forces have been put on alert. This alert reportedly covers all the Colombian Air Force's combat units. The alert means that all leave has been cancelled and the units are expected to be in a state of readiness. And on the Venezuelan side, the Bolivarian armed forces say they are carrying out a joint strategic operation in Táchira and other border states. The operation includes deploying forces to block known smuggling routes across the border with Colombia. Now to Ecuador, where the Court of Justice has reopened hearings into the Balda case. This could formally link the former president Rafael Correa to the kidnapping of a former politician in Colombia in 2012. Our correspondent Denise Herrera was at the court in Quito.
Hello, we are outside the National Court of Justice where the pretrial hearing against former President Rafael Correa and other three defendants continues. This hearing started after these people, including former President Rafael Correa, were linked to the alleged kidnapping of former politician Fernando Balda in 2012. The Prosecutor General's office and the defense team of former politician Fernando Balda have presented their arguments against former President Rafael Correa, and they have asked to the judge Daniela Camacho to start a trial against former President Correa. Now the defense team of former President Rafael Correa, his lawyer Caupolicán Ochoa is presenting his arguments in defense of former President Correa, and now the judge Daniela Camacho has to decide if they will go to a trial or not. Yes, all we have for now. Back to you at the studio.
That was Denise Herrera from Ecuador. The victims of environmental damage caused during Chevron's oil operations in the Ecuadorian Amazon protested in the capital, Quito. On Thursday, dozens of protesters, mostly from indigenous communities, gathered outside the Attorney General's office. They expressed outrage over the harm that the corporation caused to the environment. On Wednesday, Ecuador announced that it would ask the International Court of Justice to review the decision to eliminate a $9.5 billion fine in damages that Chevron had initially ordered to pay.
We, all the Amazonians, are outraged to see that the Ecuadorian state and the Attorney General of the state want, rather than protecting the interests of the Amazonians, they want to protect the commercial interests of states, of Chevron.
Coming up, more stories. We'll be back. Welcome back. With less than 2 weeks to go until the election, Brazil's presidential candidates have put forward their proposals in a debate. This is the second debate that the right-wing candidate Jair Bolsonaro, first in the polls, did not participate since he has been at a hospital. Proposals for transitioning out of the economic crisis and job generation dominated the 2-hour discussion.
Brazilians, it is a pleasure to be here in this debate. I would like to say that my government will be set up under the principle of creating opportunities, and opportunities are created by increasing the job offer and access to education. We are going to get out of the crisis, because having these opportunities, the person has a path ahead, and we prove that this is possible. Over 12 years of democratic responsibility, in which the outcome of the ballot box was respected, we generated 20 million of jobs.
The Central Workers' Union of Uruguay held a partial strike in defense of salaries and collective bargaining. Our correspondent Mateo Grille has more information from Montevideo.
The Uruguayan Workers' Federation summoned a strike which was carried out with thousands of workers taking to the streets of Montevideo. The largest concentration was at 10 a.m. The march congregated at the Ministry of Economic Affairs and headed toward the Chamber of Commerce, where the day's main event was held. The main causes of the widespread content have been the failure of the negotiations with the government and private industries for wage improvement. Despite the economic growth of Uruguay in recent years, companies are refusing to increase wages. In addition, one of the companies involved in the meeting, called Agro Trade Union, has refused to continue participating in the meetings. In addition, other petitions have been made during these demonstrations, such as the law to include transgender people and work inclusion for people with disabilities.
That was Mateo Grille from Montevideo. In Nicaragua, while there is a strong movement for peace, the government says there are still others trying to destabilize the country. Our correspondent, Maria Jose Diaz, is on the ground in Nicaragua and brings us the details.
They say there is no freedom of speech. However, they exercise their right to protest. They are defending political violence, while also calling for dialogue. This as they heaped condemnation of leaders who fled the country.
We're better without them because they'll be able to denounce all our freedoms.
Meanwhile, supporters of the Sandinista Front walk to demand peace and respect for human rights are upheld, especially for the 199 coup victims.
We once again voice our support for Commander Daniel Ortega. We ask for justice and reparation for crimes that have been committed since April 19.
Protesters also condemn those who support sanctions against Nicaragua.
This is a pity. They are Nicaraguans, just like us, but they ask foreign forces to intervene in our country, forces that have violated human rights in the past, such as the United States.
The government keeps making calls for reconciliation and for peace talks with the people.
Now to the United States, where U.S. Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh denied sexual assault allegations against him during his opening statement at a Senate committee hearing. While addressing lawmakers on Thursday, Kavanaugh also called the confirmation process a national disgrace. A woman named Christine Blasey Ford has accused Kavanaugh of sexually assaulting her at a party more than 30 years ago. Tropical storm Kirkus is causing strong waves in Dominica, as well as floods in areas of Barbados and blackouts in areas of St. Lucia. Heavy flooding is affecting St. Vincent and the Grenadines as the tropical storm nears the region. These are some of the images of the flooding on the island on Thursday. The center of the system is expected to pass to the north of mainland St. Vincent overnight, positioning to the northwest by early morning. Residents of Harlem are standing with Venezuela and Cuba. President Nicolás Maduro paid a surprise visit to the historic Riverside Baptist Church in New York on Wednesday evening, alongside with Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel.
Over the years, the Riverside Church in Harlem has opened its doors to many historic leaders, such as South African leader Nelson Mandela, U.S. civil rights activist Malcolm X, and the leader of the Cuban Revolution, Fidel Castro. On Wednesday, hundreds in the New York neighborhood received two other very special guests, President Díaz-Canel and Maduro.
This is a meeting of solidarity, and this is a cathedral of faith and unity. Therefore, we don't say names and positions. All of us here are brothers and sisters. We're all friends.
The meeting was organized in solidarity with the two nations. After he was welcomed with cries of "Long live Venezuela," President Maduro reached out in solidarity to the Harlem community.
The Bolivarian Revolution of Venezuela is very much present. It's alive and victorious. Thanks for your solidarity, your understanding. Victory to New York.
Harlem is home to a large African American and Latin American population. During the event titled "Cuba Speaks for Itself," the two Latin American leaders shared a message of struggle and hope. 18 years ago, Cuba's leader Fidel Castro delivered a 4-hour speech at the same church.
It has been a historical moment. Since Fidel, we have not seen a representative from the Cuban people. It was a very emotional moment for us to witness this solidarity. Even with the economic and diplomatic blockade, he shows us the way to fight. He leads us to a different way of life.
This is an event reflecting great unity of different social forces. Here in this country, in Harlem, 58 years ago we received Fidel, and now we welcome the President of Cuba with open arms.
With this meeting, the emblematic church and the African American community continued the tradition started in 1960, when Fidel Castro met Malcolm X at Hotel Teresa. Castro had been in the U.S. to address the United Nations. At Wednesday's solidarity event, the Harlem community reaffirmed its friendship with the Cuban people.
We'll take one last short break, but stay with us. Welcome back. China says it will promote foreign investment by removing obstacles for investors in the country. Our correspondent Isaura Diaz in Beijing tells us more.
China is becoming the leader in trade and multilateralism and announced that starting on November 1st, it will reduce the tariffs and all of the bureaucratic paperwork for investors interested in bringing their products to the country. China will end restrictions on 1,185 products with high demand, including machinery, textile, and construction. It will also reduce costs, custom processes, and the documents necessary to verify goods at the ports will decrease from 96 to 48. China wants to create a fair and convenient atmosphere for investment and open up to foreign investment. The reform is part of a plan that has been present for 40 years and has turned China into the second largest economy. This comes as the United States, the world's largest economy, is closing in and turning away from multilateralism. The measures come into effect just days before the Shanghai Investment Expo, with more than 2,800 companies from 130 countries and 150,000 local and international buyers.
That was Isaura Diaz from China. Palestinians are using recycled concrete from houses which had been damaged in the Israeli airstrikes to rebuild. They are using the low rubble to reconstruct these buildings in the Gaza Strip. although it's a lower quality material compared to the imported gravel. The idea started during the 2000 and 2008 war.
The idea to my mind after the war, due to the shortage in material and the closure of the crossing, you know that the people of Gaza are a people of innovation. I created the stone brick and I produced a gravel and recreated to make it bricks, you see. Even though we have a shortage of material, and for its quality it's about 80% compared with Israel gravel, which we can get from the crossing and import from abroad, the citizens can accept it because there is not enough money in our country and they prefer the cheapest.
The destruction of the last war was very great and we had no compensation. The compensation of URA is not enough for the house and now we are homeless. We move from one house to another till we can build a new house, God willing.
In Syria, the 2-day bus trip from Damascus to Aleppo has been shortened to just 8 hours as a result of military gains by the Syrian army. Movements of goods and people in government-held areas has been eased after years of standby because of the civil war that began in 2011. Vehicles now travel day and night, not only in the half of Syria controlled by Assad, but also to the quarter which is held by a US-backed alliance of Kurdish and Arab militias.
Now, we can go everywhere. Previously, we only traveled during the day, so we know where we are going. Now the bus goes to Aleppo during the day, and at night. There are only one checkpoint that checks IDs and the buses, and now we can go anytime during the day.
Now we are safe with our passengers, and the trip periods change. From Hama to Damascus, the period decreased 3 hours. It is used.
Nigeria's 2 main labor unions have begun a national strike after talks with the government about improved pay and conditions broke down. Only government public facilities remained closed, while markets, gas stations and private shops were open. Protesters hope this warning move will force the government into restarting a negotiation for a new minimum wage.
The minimum wage is based on a law. There would be enactment. And we want all those to happen quickly so that a new minimum wage can actually come on board. And that's where we are.
14-day notice. Even a deaf man will know that something is happening within 14 days. Government did nothing about it. So at the end of the day, we're forced to say, okay, our organ said, if government will not listen to you in 14 days, there's no chance that it will listen to you again. So call them to order by the best means possible. And that is why we have gone on strike.
A special area for Chinese books has opened at Kenya's National Library Service. The Chinese language section will help promote bilateral relations for both Chinese and Kenyan people and promote cultural understanding. The program was launched at a time when there is a growing demand of Chinese language learning in Kenya. Officials say this cultural exchange is a win-win situation.
More and more Kenyans are studying Chinese. They have a growing need for Chinese books. Based on the common goals, the Kenya National Library and the Tianjin Publishing Company have signed a memorandum of understanding on publishing and cultural cooperation.
The challenge we have had is that for the beginners who are studying the language, you'll need to have very basic books in those languages, especially in Chinese. So what we are asking for is that as we move forward, we wish to have books which are written very simple books. Sometimes they are a mix of 2 languages, both in English and Chinese.
And with that, we come to the end of this news brief. But this and many other stories you can find on our website at telesurtv.net/English. Here you can find all our latest informations, our videos, and opinion articles. And be sure to join us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.
An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives. Saturdays, only on Telesur.
Queremos verdad, reparación integral, pero sobre todo justicia, pero justicia social.
How many ways there are to tell a story? The different perspectives of our nations are on Telesur documentaries. Sundays, only on Telesur. Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch